Hi, and welcome back to my kitchen. Today I'm going to be talking about confit of duck. Now, a couple of videos ago I broke down a duck into its legs and its breasts, and I showed in another video what to do with the breasts. I put the duck legs to one side, and this is what I'm going to do with them. Confit of duck is a French classic. It also sounds really chefy. Ironically, it's not chefy, it is a French classic. The classic brasserie lunch in a Parisian brasserie would be confit of duck, probably served on a bed of frisee salad, nicely dressed with a vinaigrette. It is, as I say, very straightforward to do. It is duck cooked in fat, deep cooked in fat. Not like a deep fat fryer where you would expect lots of bubbling fat, but very calmly, very gently cooked in fat in an oven. Now, to strictly be serious about this, I would probably use duck fat or goose fat, but I don't have that much, and actually it would break the bank to get that much fat to actually do a deep confit of duck legs. If you collect the fat of several ducks as you roast them, you probably have enough. I don't have that luxury at the moment. Now, confit of duck you will find to purchase in jars full of 3 or 4 or 5 duck legs sealed in fat, sometimes in vacuum packs with a couple of them and all the air sucked out and a fair bit of the fat left. Makes it look very fatty. It's not actually massively fatty because all the fat drains out from under the skin of the leg, and when you remove it from the fat that it's sat in and pop it in the oven to finish it, most of the fat drains away. You're left with wonderful crispy skin and rich moist flesh. It's part of the great dish cassoulet. Now, cassoulet is a controversial dish. Not really because there's anything controversial about a duck and sausage and beans stew, but the controversy comes from the fact that every single grand-mère in France has the best recipe according to their grandchildren. It's that simple. So avoid saying I have the best cassoulet recipe because you'll be upsetting an enormous amount of elderly women in France. How do we do it? Well, the first thing we do is we take our duck legs and for 24 hours or more we salt them, a good sprinkling of sea salt, put them in a bowl and leave them in the fridge, just so the salt part preserves them a little bit and draws out some of the water. You'll then be left with a duck breast, a duck leg, I beg your pardon, that looks something like that. We then heat up some fat on the stove. I'm using lard, as I say, not duck fat or goose fat for expense reasons. We slide the duck leg into it with its friend the other duck leg, and then we pop it in an oven at about 140. That is gas mark 1. That's not terribly hot at all. We leave it there for about an hour and a half so that it just gently half poaches, half fries in that fat. We do not want the duck leg to take on very much colour at all. We then take it out and let it set. Let the fat completely set. It goes stone cold. Historically, this is the way we would have preserved duck legs, in fat. If you've got a perfect set of fat above something, no oxygen can get to it. One of the main reasons that bacteria can increase in volume, on meat especially, is if it has oxygen available to it. So here we go. So here on my hob, I have a casserole which is about a third to half full of, in this case, lard, but like I say, it could be duck fat, it could be goose fat. It's at about 130 to 140 degrees. It is not seriously frying chips type hot. For that kind of frying, deep fat frying, you'd need it somewhere near 180 to 200. Simple as simple. I'm very carefully, without splashing, going to slide the duck legs into the fat, making sure they're submerged. I'm going to turn off my hob and I'm going to put the lid on. What I'm going to do now is, unbelievably carefully, I'm going to pop that in my oven at 140 degrees for 1.5 hours, and then I'm going to turn off my oven and just leave it to cool for a bit. Hi, and welcome back to my kitchen. A couple of days have passed. It could be a couple of weeks, it could be a couple of months. This will keep for a very long period of time, even at ambient temperature. So, last thing we did is we popped the duck in the fat, fully submerged in the fat, in the oven at 140 for 1.5 hours. When that 1.5 hours was up, I turned the oven off. I left the container in there, really as a safety thing. I didn't like the idea of pulling a pot basically full of molten lard out of the oven. So I let it set in there overnight, and it set, and it looks pretty much like that. Now, hopefully, you can just about see a hint of a shadow. That's one of the duck legs that's quite close to the actual surface, but the surface has not been broken by it. That's quite important. This means that no oxygen has got into that duck. It is entirely preserved. Without oxygen, nothing's going to go wrong with it. But we do have to get it out. Now, if this was duck fat, I would simply dive in with a spoon and hoik it out. However, it's lard, which is a little bit harder. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put this on the stove and just melt the lard. I don't want any more cooking, so I'm literally going to get the lard to a liquid state, turn off the heat, lift the duck legs out. So, as you can see, all the fat has melted, and we have 2 duck legs sitting in the fat. Now, you'll also notice that they haven't taken on much colour. They don't look like that kind of dark golden brown that maybe we're looking for. That magic will happen in the oven. But they have been cooked completely through. It's worth remembering. So we're going to pop these onto a tin, a roasting dish rather than a tin, and we're going to pop them in the oven at about 160 to 180 for about 20-25 minutes. If your oven is lucky enough to have a roasting function, you should probably use it. You could pop these on a grill in order that the fat drains off. I'm not going to. They can sit in a little bit of fat, but it is worth remembering most of the fat from those duck legs has now gone into this. So there's very little fat on them, and that skin should crisp up beautifully. So the duck is now out of the oven. It was there for about 20 minutes. It roasted, basically really to get the skin nice and crisp. And if you can listen, really crisp. There's a lot of fat swimming about in the bottom of this, but I'm just going to pop that back in the pan in which it was cooked, ready for the next one. And gradually it'll take on its own character. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to pop the duck on the plate. So out she comes, and on the plate like that. You'll notice there's a salad on the plate. Asparagus is bang in season at the moment, so I've blanched off some asparagus, taken them down cold very, very quickly, washing them under a cold tap to make sure they maintain that lovely green look and all that flavour. I'm going to dress that with a classic French vinaigrette. Easy as pie. Everybody talks that it's really difficult. It's basically a tiny bit of mustard, some vinegar, some oil, some salt and some pepper. The amounts vary enormously depending on who you talk to. Everybody, again, like a lot of things, thinks they've got the perfect recipe. Experiment, see what you like. So I'm literally just going to nap that over the salad just to give it a little bit of a sheen and no more. Now, this would be fine for lunch. This would be a fairly classic lunch. The salad, if it was a classic French brasserie lunch, would probably be frisée. In fact, there's little bits of frisée in there if you have a look. But it's dinner, so I'm just going to add a little bit more. Again, slightly French. I'm going with matchstick chips just on the side in there, just to give it a little bit of carb. Now, the word brasserie means brewery, which is odd because France is largely a wine drinking country, except in the north. So what I think we should put with that is an old-fashioned modern IPA.